everyone, welcome back to another very ordinary episode of How I Know. Yeah, there is nothing different about this episode. This is exactly what it looks like every single week. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Now obviously we are missing someone very important. We're missing Jack Finch. He is off on his travels right now. He's here, there and everywhere. So just for this 1 week, it's just gonna be me talking to me. Yeah, it's gonna be quite a lonely episode, and you'll see what I mean later when it comes to the actual story. I'm sort of building my own hype up for this video because I don't have anyone else to sort of get excited with. This is really sad. For those of you that watch every week, you know that we always like to build a lot of hype around the title. So here's all that hype. The title for this video is, as you can probably see already, The Last Person on Earth. This story is a bit of a departure from stories that I've done in the past. It's quite different. I think it will maybe give you guys feelings that you've not had before when listening to any of my other stories, so that can only be a good thing, I hope. Let me know what you guys think after you've watched the video and leave a comment down below. And yeah, I'll do a little bit of discussion after. That sounds nice. Here we go. Mac didn't expect to be the last person on Earth. That's just how it all panned out. And he wasn't sure if he'd done all that much to ensure that he and he alone was now alive. It felt more like luck. The bullets never quite hit him. The few bandits that did catch him would quickly be caught in another battle before they knew what to do with him, leaving Mac to slip away, once again, out into nature. As the apocalypse raged on in the towns and cities, Mac spent more and more time out in nature. At first, the woods were just shelter, a base from which to launch scavenging missions to the smouldering towns. His luck extended to these trips too. In his hometown, the first supermarket that Mac went to was empty. Naturally, it had been raided during the first week of martial law, a long time ago. Every shelf was now upturned, every packet and package and bottle removed. The cupboard was bare. But when Mac lifted up one of the shelves at the back, he found a freezer underneath the rubble. A full freezer full of frozen chicken and hot dogs. More than he could possibly eat, more than he could even carry. That was a good month. Mac's luck didn't end there either, not by a long stretch. On 2 occasions he'd heard the roamers come within 100 feet of the treehouse. Both times he pressed his back against the trunk and made deals with God. "Please," he'd whisper, "just get me out this one last time." And both times they walked on by. Time passed. The roamers became more infrequent. The radio signals turned from panic to murmurs to whispers to static. Mac left the treehouse and spent more time in town. There was nobody there now. He lived in the old house on the hill. It served as a nice lookout, just in case. The following year, he went to live by the sea. Fish were a sustainable food source now that the crumbling stores had run dry. The port was empty too. Mac spent 2 months living on an anchored oil tanker, just because he could. It would have made a good story if there was anyone to tell it to. 2 years later, he followed the mountain trail to the lowlands. Every town was empty, so too was the capital. While staying in a cabin on the outskirts of town, he thought he saw a wild man, but on approach it was nothing more than a scarecrow, long abandoned by its makers, a foe turned friend for the birds. At first, Mac thought he was just alone in his part of the country. It was never the most populated to begin with, even before the fall. He headed west, but the great cities now laced with vines showed no signs of activity. The journey east took its toll on Mac. He was no longer the young man who slipped past the curfew all those years ago, outran the watchers and survived as the world burned. He now felt his years. On the east coast, where it all began, there were more trees than buildings in most towns now. Road signs pointed nowhere, for no one. It was a cool day in May. Mac sat on the steps of the Almany and contemplated. As far as he was aware, he was the last person in the country. As unlikely as it seemed, someone had to be, and perhaps it had to be him. He'd shown no signs of the sickness. Some people managed to last months, a few clung on for years, but it seemed to take everyone in the end, except for Mac. Lainey saw Mac before he saw her. She liked that.
It meant she still had it, and more importantly, it meant that he wasn't much of a threat to her, but he was someone, and that was something. She hadn't seen a living soul in the past 2 years, and although this aging figure on the Almany steps wasn't exactly the fountain of youth, he seemed to be alive, at least for now. "Is your blood good?" she said. Mac had drawn his gun and spun round before Laney had even finished the sentence. A half-eaten fish cake sat poised between his lips. Laney repeated the question. Mac stood, stunned. It had been a long time since he'd heard another person's voice, and so long since he'd used his own. Who are you?" said Mac. "I'm Laney," said Laney. "I think we're the last ones left, and I'm not going to hurt you, so you can put the gun and the fish cake down." Mac held his ground, but let the fish cake drop to the floor. "I thought I was the last person on Earth," said Mac. "Where did you come from?" "Over there," said Laney, pointing behind the Almany, out west, beyond the hills. "So did I," said Mac. Laney nodded. The silence surprised Mac more than he thought. For years he'd imagined meeting another person, anyone but Aroma, and now that he had, he was lost for words. "What's the matter?" said Laney. "I'm not sure," said Mac. "I thought I was looking for someone, anyone. I thought I was the last person on Earth." "I quite like that." Laney shifted her leg, letting the weight of her gun press against her waist. Her fingers twitched by her side. "Well then, what are you going to do about that? You know I ain't Aroma." "I can see that," replied Mac. "You'd be on the floor if you were." Laney smiled. "I know. The same goes for you." Mac didn't return the smile. He lowered his gun. "So," Laney continued, "I can't call you the last person on Earth because, as we have established, you ain't that." Mac grunted. "And I can't call myself that either, for the same reason." "So, what do we call each other?" Mac picked up the fish cake from the steps of the Almany. He wiped off the dirt and the crumbs and took another bite. He stared at Laney with squinted eyes. A flock of birds landed on the church over the road, their squawks drowned out by a cold wind that whipped through the tumble-down streets. "I'm Mac," said Mac. "I'm Laney," said Laney.
Well, what did you think of that? How did that make you feel? I know it was quite different to the stories I'd done in the past before. My inspiration for this story comes from all those sort of sci-fi, horror, apocalypse movies that everyone seems to love over the past few years. And I noticed that obviously they always focus on people and characters who are intrinsic to what's happening right there. It's usually the people that like find the virus, or they're the main ones who are fighting the zombies, or they're the ones that start a whole colony of separate humans, and it's all very exciting and stuff. But I was thinking, for the average person in an apocalypse, life would probably be quite boring. You know, obviously there are periods where you'd be fighting off the bad guys and, you know, all kinds of other exciting apocalypse stuff. But mainly, as the years just roll on, life would be pretty boring, just your sort of day-to-day stuff after a while. And I quite like the whole idea of a sort of mundane apocalypse, and I like the idea of a character who really didn't actually want to be like fighting all the bad guys and starting a new civilization. Someone who was perhaps quite okay just sort of being by themselves. A bit of a grumpy loner, if you like. And that's why I thought of Mac, just a guy who he thinks that he wants to find other people out there and start a new civilization and, you know, be a leader and do all the stuff that you see in the zombie movies, but really he secretly likes being quite alone, and he likes the title of being the last person in his hometown or his country or even on Earth, and he doesn't really like it when another person comes along and sort of takes that title from him. And then I thought I'd cut it off just when some exciting things might happen, just because that's the kind of story I wanted to write, you know? It's like the calm before the storm. It's the boring apocalyptic life before something interesting happens. So that's what I did. Hopefully you guys liked it, or at the very least it made you feel some sort of new emotion that you perhaps haven't got got from my previous stories. Either way, let me know in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to send your own stories into this email address right here, ohnostories@gmail.com. Once Jack is back and we get back into the flow of things, I'm sure we're going to do a live stream again very soon. I know some of you guys have been asking a lot about that. I think we might have slipped up and not done one last week, but definitely sometime in the next few weeks we will do one, and we'll let you know when that is. So keep those stories coming in and we'll read them out on our live stream. Until then, thanks for watching, guys. Business as usual next week, and I'll see you all in the next one.